A Howland man was sentenced this week in federal court in Bangor for making false statements on a passport application. 73-year-old Eric Erickson, a registered sex offender, was sentenced to time served after spending 14 months in prison. Erickson was found guilty in October following a 3-day trial of knowingly making false statements on his passport application. Court records show Erickson applied for a passport at a post office in Bangor in March 2023. When asked about other names he had used, he failed to disclose his multiple aliases on his application. Erickson also falsely reported that he had never applied or been issued a U.S. passport before, when he had under a different name. He falsely certified that the information in his application was true and correct. Erickson is on the state sex offender registry following his convictions for gross sexual assault, unlawful sexual contact, and sexual abuse of a minor in 2010.